acres for the year ahead, rural development, and renewable diesel. 3 important issues to all of us, and we've got them all covered here this morning. And as long as we're at it, let's throw in a dose of a wild card issue for the livestock markets. Meat demand at the start of another year.
Live from Pie Day via Farm Journal broadcast, this is AgriTalk. This morning we begin with a conversation with Rich Nelson from Allendale. Then it's U.S. Representative Sam Graves from Missouri. And later, Tim Luginsland from Wells Fargo. Directly following the news, Greg Henderson from Drovers. I'm a handsome newsman, Davis Michelson. Now, here's the host of AgriTalk, Jeff Laurie.
Okay, so how many digits can you do pi out to?
I can do like 2 of them, I think.
Yeah. See, that's me too. 3.14, right?
And 1.4. Yeah. That's all I need.
3.1. But I'm not even going to try to go any further than that.
Well, and for most of my equations, just the standard 3.14 usually covers it.
Okay.
A lot of rhombuses involved in my research.
Right.
Geometric patterns, sorts of things. I don't want to get too technical.
Dude, I want to stop because all I'm thinking about right now is like mixed berry. And pecan and key lime and pumpkin.
One time I multiplied a key lime pie by pie, and I got chuckberry.
Nice.
I don't know how that works.
Nice. Worked out just fine for you is what
just
it
fine.
did.
You betcha.
Exactly.
I think pi is like math's version of leap year, where everything's supposed to fit perfectly, but it doesn't quite, and we have to kind of fix it once every 4 years.
Okay.
The crowbar of the mathematics is pi.
It's a fudge factor. Fudge pie.
That sounds delicious.
Fuzzy math.
Man, oh man. I'm going to get okay, that's it. I'm distracted the rest of the day now.
Oh, no.
Thank
shiny
you.
Things. So much shiny math.
Welcome to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. That is Davis and Big Apple Joe Stackler. Holy smokes. We got a lot of ground that we're going to cover in today's show. We're going to talk about the Allendale survey of planting intentions for corn, soybeans, spring wheat, right down the list of a long list of potential crops in the U.S. We are going to talk about rural development, the E-Bridge Act with Representative Sam Graves, and then we're going to talk renewable diesel at the end of the show today. Greg Henderson coming up next. Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover today. Let's go ahead and get started. What do you got in the news?
Sure thing. Well, I've got private exporters reporting sales of 100,000 metric tons of corn for delivery to Mexico during the 23-24 marketing year, a piece of positive daily demand news.
Yeah, and it's good to get that, that's for sure. It is daily export sales on corn is something that has been missing from the equation for corn in this recovery. And here we go. We are finally starting to get some.
National Weather Service looking for heavy snow through today from the Central Rockies, foothills, and nearby high plains before gradually tapering off on Friday. A long-duration event of mountain snow and lower elevation rain expected to develop over the Four Corners region beginning Friday. Severe thunderstorms and excessive rainfall expected to push southward from the east central plains this morning and into southeastern Texas by Saturday morning. Very mild and warm weather expands eastward from the central to the eastern U.S. going into the weekend.
Yeah, a little chillier this weekend. Warm it up again next week.
In February 2024, the Producer Price Index for final demand in the U.S. increased by 0.6% compared to the previous month, which is the largest rise since August of the previous year, doubling market expectations of a 0.3% increase. Key sectors experiencing growth in Feb included building materials, gardening equipment sales, which increased by 2.2%. Motor vehicles and part dealers also saw a notable rise, while electronics appliance stores experienced a 1.5% increase.
Yeah, let's maybe push that interest rate cut a little further down the road, maybe well into the second half of the year now.
Well, Chip, representatives from 49 U.S. companies and organizations will join the Department of Agribusiness Trade Mission to Seoul, South Korea, led by Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Ag Affairs Alexis Taylor. The mission takes place March 25 through 28. South Korea, Chip, ranks as the United States' fifth largest single export market.
Right, and these trade missions are the headliners for the administration when it comes to ag trade. So you either hit with these trade missions or you miss.
Yeah, and get this. The UK recently signed a trade agreement with the state of Texas as negotiations for a post-Brexit deal with the wider United States have stalled. In other news, unit sales of 100-plus horsepower ag tractors increased slightly in February in the U.S., according to new data from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. The month recorded an increase of 2.8% compared to last year. However, year-to-date data reflects sales below 2023 in total units of ag tractors and combines. The Sierra Club has filed a lawsuit against the Securities and Exchange Commission in response to a recently released SEC rule regarding climate disclosure requirements for publicly traded companies. According to the Sierra Club, the new rule fails to provide investors with sufficient information regarding companies' potential exposures to climate risks.
Yeah, we talked about this from the cattleman's perspective last week, and it's good news for farmers because it reduces what could have been some very burdensome bookkeeping and documentation.
And quickly here, Walmart recently announced an investment in a new milk processing facility in Robinson, Texas that will open in 2026. The facility will support nearly 400 jobs in the community and allow Walmart to meet the growing demand from customers. Chip.
Got it. All right. Let's bring in, thank you, Davis. Let's bring in Greg Henderson, Editorial Director at Drovers. How you doing, Greg?
Good morning, Chip. I'm great. How are you?
We're doing just fine. Talk to me about what you have learned about meat sales so far this year.
So in February, the meat report, the data is out, and the price for all cuts, all kinds of meat, $4.60 a pound. That's up just 1% from last year. But on the beef side, it's $6.46 fresh beef price is the average in February, and that's up 6.5%, Chip. Meanwhile, our competition chicken at $3.07 is down 1.5%. Pork is down 0.4% in price. So there's plenty of competition for the beef spenders there. However, total fresh meat sales and fresh beef is at $2.8 billion. And that's up 6% just on the volume. So consumers still spend a lot of money on beef. And as we know, eating out is getting expensive. Get this, Chip, the fast food restaurants saw a 5.2% increase in February in price compared to a 3.8% for that retail grocery store price. So fast food's expensive, getting more so. A lot of that has to do with the labor that they have to, the raises they've gotten for labor and those costs.
Yeah, those fast food costs in particular, it's a trend that started with COVID, but more people eating at home, right?
Absolutely, more people are eating at home. One tidbit I'll share with you on the Super Bowl, Chip. Consumers say they spent $36 for snacks for during the game.
An average of $36. Interesting.
Yep.
Seems like a lot for eating at home during a big football game, but there it is.
Seems like you could buy a steak or two for that.
Dude, we got K-State, Iowa State tonight. Big 12 tourney.
Yes, we do. We need another upset of those Cyclones.
Go Cyclones!
To get to the tournament.
AgriTalk is brought to you by John Deere. For generations before and generations to come, John Deere is part of your farm and your family. Whatever your technology needs, John Deere has the tools to help grow your farm.
Davis, I think Greg Henderson had more to say about the Kansas State Iowa State game than I did. My message is pretty simple. Go Cyclones. It sounds like he had a whole lot more that he wanted to say about that.
I think he really did, but you've got the bully
pulpit. It really
pulpit,
breaks my heart that we cut him off.
Yeah, he's gone. You're still here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I will say it again. Go Cyclones. All right. This next guest is very familiar to the afternoon listeners of AgriTalk, but Rich has been on the morning show as well, and and he joins us again right now. Rich Nelson, Chief Strategist at Allendale, Inc. How you doing there, Rich?
Doing fantastic. How about yourself there, Chip?
Doing real fine. You were with us, as a matter of fact, not that long ago down at Commodity Classic, as you were kind of in the middle of the survey for 2024 acres, right?
That is right. And we were really trying to see, especially at that in-person discussion with a lot of producers at the Commodity Classic about this discussion with acreage changes. And at that time, we were not seeing what we expected to see. Right. So that's something we kind of carried through with the rest of the survey through the next week and a half there.
You know, when you had the discussion down at Commodity Classic that, all right, you know, everybody's looking for this big cut in corn acres. Maybe we're not seeing that in the survey to this point. I thought to myself, good grief, for Rich to say that about a survey that's ongoing, it must really be leaning in up or above expectations on corn. And we'll get to those numbers here in a moment. But yeah, it certainly did. Before we get to the numbers, Rich, we got to lay some groundwork here. You mentioned the work that you did down at Commodity Classic in the face-to-face conversations, but who did you survey, and how did you do the survey?
So this is a survey of U.S. producers, and frankly, we just want to see everybody from every state if we can. And this is conducted either in person, like we mentioned at the Commodity Classic, phone call, or producers can submit their own estimates by themselves using the internet as well. So that's our discussion. U.S. farmers, we want to know what corn, soybean, and wheat acreage was. If possible, cotton and some of the other small grains. But for the most part, this is a corn, soybean discussion, and we really want to try to get some solid answers before USDA's report at the end of the month.
Okay. How much area did the survey cover?
So we had 28 separate states, and we had valid numbers to cover about, I want to say, 9 or 10 of the main core states. So this represents about 78% of U.S. corn and soybean ground. So this is really a Midwest and portions of the Plains survey for the most part here.
But clearly representative if you get that much.
It is. And really our main questions, we know most of the Illinois and Iowa producers are going to stay with standard rotation. Our question was really about people in the Plains, North Dakota down through Texas. Are they going to switch? Because those are people who often make more active changes with acreage. And that was our key focus really with this year's survey.
Okay. Gotcha. This year's survey. How long has Allendale been doing the survey?
Well, I want to say, so I've been with Allendale for 27 years, I want to say. I think we've done this for at least 25 of those years. So we've got a good history. We do understand how our survey compares with USDA. We do understand those type of adjustments. So we've done some bits. So we should have a reasonable chance of coming close to USDA there.
Okay. So what is the history there? And let's start with this. What set of USDA acreage estimates do you want this survey compared to?
So we want this compared with their own March 28th survey, the prospective plantings, which come out. And pretty much we fine-tune this to cover the exact same dates for the most part as USDA's own survey. In fact, maybe a little wider range. And this is our main point for estimating that. We understand that the final numbers will be different, but our goal is, what is USDA's March report most likely going to say?
Okay. So how's it done in the past? How well has it matched up with the prospective plantings report?
So just using the past 10 years, for instance, we've got the direction right on corn in 10 of the past 10 years, direction right on soybeans in 9 of the past 10 years. And I will say very clearly, the soybean numbers are usually a little jumpy. They do bounce around a bit. And as far as being accurate with the acreage numbers, in the past 10 years, we've come within, I want to say, 1.5 million acres for the corn side. And I want to say for soybeans, we're usually within about 2 million acres. Again, there's a little wider variance with soybeans. Those numbers do bounce around just a little bit more than the corn side.
Okay. All right. I think we've laid all the groundwork so that we can understand what these numbers mean, right?
We certainly can. I think that's a trade discussion. It really, are we going to get that main switch from corn to soybeans. And that's really the main question we're asking for this year's specific survey here.
Exactly. Now, a year ago, 94.6 million acres planted to corn, soybeans, 83.6 million acres planted to soybeans. What are the trends from the survey that you see this year?
So main point for us on the corn side, we started off last month with USDA's own Ag Forum conference suggesting corn acres down 3.6 million. Our survey only reined that in. We reined that into about only a 1.2 million acre cut. So a bit different than what USDA suggested last month. Soybean numbers, USDA had suggested a 3.9 million acre increase. In this case, only about a 2.2 million acre increase. Okay. So both corn and soybeans perhaps not seeing that major switch that was discussed last month.
Yeah, movement in the direction that the market has anticipated over the winter, just not as far as maybe what's been built into prices. Can we go that far?
I do think that some of this has been baked into prices, especially with the soybean side. And we got to point out this soybean rebound, at least, is getting a bit respectable. And perhaps we are losing some of that bearish influence from the perception of a 4 million acre increase.
Corn and soybean acres combined, according to your survey, 179.3 million. How does that number feel to you?
For the most part, it feels fine. And keep in mind, we are expecting an overall light drop in overall acres. So corn, soybeans, wheat, also cotton, also the small grain. So all those put together should see some type of light net decline for this year. And obviously our questions are going to be really on the wheat side, and cotton kind of fill in the questions with fill in the blanks for the corn and soybean ideas here.
Yeah, that cotton question is going to be a big one as we make our way through spring and trying to figure out exactly how that is going to play out. Now, you also surveyed for spring wheat, didn't you?
Yes, we did. In fact, we do have quite active coverage for that North Dakota and portion of South Dakota, portion of Montana. We actually do have good coverage for those producers up there. So as far as the winter wheat discussion, USDA suggested about a 2.5 million acre drop. Our survey reined that in to only about a 2.0 million acre drop. The question on the spring wheat issue is we actually suggested that we'd see about 50,000 acres higher than last year for spring wheat. So that's the question for us. Down on winter wheat, a very minor rebound for the other spring and durum wheat here.
They seem to be looking for some alternatives up there to corn and soybeans, and spring wheat is obviously one of the things that they can jump to. On production, total production, what does this suggest for the supply side of the balance sheet on corn for 2024-25, Rich?
So, using our numbers for percent harvested as well as our viewpoint on trend yield, this does put this corn crop at a 15.5 billion bushel crop. And that would be a record, and that would be about 173 million over last year. And as a reminder to our audience, guys, it's not just a production issue. It's the fact that we're carrying in a large increase in beginning stocks from this old crop situation. So the total supply situation would be almost 985 million bushels over last year. So this is a problem for us on corn side.
17 billion something?
That's right. I've got 17.7.
Yeah, 17.7 billion on the total supply. We need to figure out how we're going to use more of that, no doubt about it. Beans, is that a record? Would that be a record bean crop?
And we don't have it as a record. I want to say this is probably number 4, number 5 there.
Okay. All right. So a little easier to manage on the supply side of things there. Wow. Music is playing. Rich, that went really fast. Dude, thanks for doing the survey. This is hard work, and trying to make sense and help us make sense of what the numbers are telling us is really important work. Thank you.
Sure appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
You bet. That is Rich Nelson. He is the chief strategist at Allendale, Inc. We're going to have a conversation with Representative Sam Graves next.
Time for Markets Now with the experts from Pro Farmer.
Joining us now, Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady. And Beej, I'm calling up the chart right now because it feels like beans have backed way off the highs. What's going on?
Yeah, the trading about mid range here at midday, and you know a lot of the pullback, so to speak, has come in that meal, while still trading to the upside, has really reduced its gains. And the corn and wheat markets are under pressure here at mid-morning. And so soybeans are facing some headwinds. But we do see the soy complex as a whole, soybeans, soy meal, and soy oil, still all trading to the upside. But they've definitely come well off their session highs.
Exactly. Good. We need to emphasize that for sure. Okay, you said it, corn, wheat under pressure. What's leading things to the downside?
Well, the winter wheat markets are posting double-digit losses, which is leading to the downside, and just not a lot of positive news out there. Marketing year low for wheat export sales this morning on a weekly basis there. Corn actually had really good weekly export sales at over almost 1.3 million tons, and a daily sale to Mexico. But boy, that's not offsetting the spillover pressure from the wheat market at the moment.
Gotcha. Big time pressure on the cattle complex.
Yeah, and big time reversal. We traded at new for the move high earlier on, and the buyer interest just gave out above yesterday's highs, and now we're facing heavy price pressure in live cattle futures and feeders, and it's just making new session lows as we speak here, and just continue to erode away. So technical breakdown there, and then hog futures are under mild pressure here at mid-morning.
Good stuff, Brian. Thank you. That is Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady on Markets Now.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. Our name says it all. AgriTalk. What more do you need to know?
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm your host, Chip Flory. Glad you're with us. Davis, we do kind of a fair amount of complaining about the dysfunction of Congress.
I know we do.
Yeah. But every now and then you can spot a committee that gets some stuff done. And this committee, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, is actually getting stuff done. They're moving legislation. And they've got a budget and spending bills that need to be directed, and they're getting that job done. I want to talk with the chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, U.S. Representative Sam Graves, representing the 6th District of Missouri. Chairman Graves, it's great to speak with you again. How are you?
Yeah, doing great. We got rain last night, so doing even better.
Yeah, and he's a farmer. You can tell right there when he throws that out that Representative Graves is a farmer. We've talked about this one before, and it's the expansion of the rural access to internet. This one, the eBridge Act, eliminating barriers to rural internet development grant eligibility act. Tell us about this one.
So it's a real simple bill, and basically what it does is it provides for that last mile. In many cases, that is very expensive, and it's hard for small communities. You take like my community of Tarkio, they don't have the expertise to apply for grants. They don't have the resources, the manpower to be able to apply for grants. So this completely wipes out the red tape and allows them to partner with some of the companies that are spreading broadband, implementing broadband, installing broadband throughout to get that last mile done. It uses the existing grant process and the existing funding process, but just completely eliminates all the red tape so communities can access these dollars.
Okay, so the last part of it, the GE, the grant eligibility, that's really the key to this, isn't it? It's helping, as you said, the communities figure out how to get that, how to finish projects up, correct?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Getting it to the homes, and it's becoming more and more and more important just to function today, whether it's in business or education, telemedicine, you name it, to have fast internet service, fast broadband service, and so this just allows those communities to just be able to cut right through the red tape. They just simply don't have the resources, the money to be able to do this.
Well, and speaking of the resources, a lot of times the resources are brought in by private industry, and
That's right.
This bill or this legislation encourages working with private industry, correct?
Absolutely. That's what it does, and that's what it focuses on. And it was hugely bipartisan. We're hoping the Senate moves it. We've been able to. Now it's passed out of the House, overwhelmingly bipartisan, and it's on its way to the Senate. We've passed it before, and hopefully the Senate's pick it up.
Why hasn't the Senate already? This seems like such a no-brainer to me. Why hasn't the Senate picked it up before?
As much as anything else, to be quite honest, it's just a scheduling issue. They struggle with scheduling on the Senate side, being able to get legislation across the floor. We have argued, though, this is easy. It's very bipartisan, and it's something that could move very, very quickly, and hopefully they'll take that into consideration.
If the Senate leadership wanted to get this done, they would find the time to schedule it.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
So yes. It's not a scheduling issue; it's a leadership issue.
It's a leadership issue. Scheduling obviously plays into it, but it's still, you're absolutely correct. If they want this, it can easily be done, and Senator Schumer could bring it up instantly.
Yep. And I think if he would, I don't know, how do you vote against it?
Well, you don't, and that's the reason why in the House it passed overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
Coming out. So it would be the same way in the Senate.
Be a nice test. Come on, Schumer. Yeah. It would be a really nice test. If you want to see if the Senate can actually work together and get something done in a bipartisan way, here's a good one to put in front of on the floor for a vote and see what happens. I hope they do this.
Well, you and I both.
Okay. All right. You know what? Let's put out the call to action. Call your senator. Call your senator and tell him that you need to get the E-Bridge Act on the Senate floor for a full Senate vote. We need to push this one forward. Another one, the Pony Up Act. What is this one?
So this is pretty simple, and we've actually got a couple of things going on in Congress as it deals with the post office. And the post office continues to struggle with rate increases. They continue to struggle with late mail. And what we're hearing, and every member of Congress out there is hearing from people that they're getting late notices, or they're getting fined for paying bills late, or they're getting interest costs or late fees applied because bills are late. And basically this says that if somebody has gotten a late fee and charged even interest on top of that, if they've gotten a late fee as a result of the post office not delivering their payment on time, then the post office is going to pony up and they're going to pay it.
Got it. How widespread of an issue is that?
It's widespread. It's all over the country, and it's getting worse and worse. Members of Congress are hearing about it through their constituent service arm of their office. They're hearing about it from everybody, and it isn't getting any better at all. Under the new leadership, the postal leadership, it has gotten worse, and I don't foresee it. Unless they change the way they're doing business, it isn't going to get any better. They've had 4 rate increases just since 2021, and it continues to get worse. Yet we're paying more.
Yep. Okay. That sounds like another good one to talk with your congressman about. Let's. I'm gonna go general with you here, if that's okay. Because I'm curious what your thoughts were about last week's State of the Union address from President Biden.
Well, the thing that aggravated me as much as anything else was the way the president talks about standing with farmers. And yet, we're not stupid. We see how laughable this is. If you look at what's happened with diesel fuel prices and the price of fertilizer, if you look at the fact that he has put radical environmentalists in charge of the EPA, and they continue to do everything they can to ban or restrict the use of herbicides and pesticides. He desperately wants to expand the death tax, which is would have a devastating impact on farm families and our small communities. Death should not be a taxable event. He's just made it, a million times harder to be a farmer in this country. And it's hard enough the way it is. The fact that we're price takers on both ends, we're a price taker when it comes to all of our inputs, a price taker when it comes to all of our output. And then you throw the weather in on top of that. It's hard enough to produce in the United States. And he's continued to make it even harder. And then to say that he stands with farmers and stands with agriculture is just laughable.
Yeah. Okay. From an observer's point of view there in the House, what's happening or maybe isn't happening with the Farm Bill?
So it's actually moving. It's taken some time, and obviously that coalition that we have between the nutrition programs and inner city, and then the outstate, agriculture, the actual farm bill component of it, which, by the way, is the smallest part of the bill now, is the actual farm component of it. That coalition is very fragile. And so it takes time to foster it and get it going, but we are seeing the bill move now. They're doing more work on it. And I'm optimistic that we're going to have it. It's vitally important. Most consumers don't understand that it's truly consumer food policy. It's not a farm bill. It's consumer food policy, and it maintains that safe, that affordable, and abundant food supply that we have here in the United States. We can take our food supply for granted as consumers, but that's because of the farm policy, the ag policy that we have. And that's an incredible thing to be able to say as a nation, that we can take our food supply for granted. And unfortunately, though, that hurts agriculture.
Yep. Okay. Well, the House has got a motivated leader on this one. I hope that Chairman Thompson leads the way on it. Just got a text from a parent. They want to know what Congress is going to do with TikTok and what they're going to have to deal with their kids on.
Well, it's, right now, and the unfortunate part is that you hear so many people say that this bans TikTok. It doesn't ban TikTok. It just requires that the Chinese government divest in it. And what's interesting is this wasn't a partisan vote by any stretch. 352 votes on the floor of the House. And we have the luxury, I guess you could say, of the intelligence, and we see what the Chinese government is doing with this information. And what's interesting, and we got a lot of calls from middle schoolers, interestingly enough, but we got a lot of calls from students when this came up, because on TikTok that morning when they opened up the app, they were told, call your member of Congress, tell them this bill is bad. And they had to input their address to be able to find out who their member of Congress is. But yet when we asked them where they were from, they wouldn't tell us what their address was.
Right. Interesting. We need to talk more often. Thank you so much, Congressman. We sure appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. That is U.S. Representative Sam Graves, Chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee.
AgriTalk is brought to you by ESN. Don't risk your nitrogen investment. ESN is designed to beat the 5 ROI killers and provide season-long end to your crop. Learn how ESN works at smartnitrogen.com.
Welcome back. I'm Chip. Davis, as I mentioned at the start of the show, we're talking about some issues that are very important to all AgriTalk listeners, and one of those being the biofuel industry and the development of renewable diesel. And there's a new study out from Wells Fargo. Tim Luginsland the dairy, grain, and oilseed sector manager at Wells Fargo Food and Agribusiness Industry, put together a study with Jeff Milliken from the Wells Fargo Commercial Banking Agribusiness Group. It's titled How Renewable Diesel is a Game Changer for the U.S. Soybean Market. And Tim joins us right now. Hey, Tim, Chip Flory
Hi,
here.
Chip.
How are you?
Glad to meet you. I'm glad to be here. We had a really good rain here in the Midwest last night, so it's a really great day. Everybody's in a good mood.
Amen to that. Amen. We're still getting it here in Northeast Iowa. It's cloudy and rainy, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. We will take it. Okay, so Tim, we talk about renewable diesel quite a bit, but let's make sure that everybody understands there's a difference between renewable diesel and biodiesel, and the incentives behind renewable diesel production. Where is that incentive coming from?
Okay, renewable diesel is completely soybean oil, 100%. Biodiesel was soybean oil with about 80% of the content being petroleum based. So we're talking a whole different animal, and it's going to consume a lot of soybeans. Now, the incentive, okay, this is different from the ethanol days where we had a mandate. Now, what we're striving for is a tax incentive, and the industry's on pins and needles waiting for Congress to finalize that. That's going to be what they call the GREET method. That's greenhouse gases, regulated emissions, and energy use in technologies model. And there will be a tax credit of roughly $1.25 per gallon.
Okay. All right. It's right in the title, and I want to get to this, and I don't want to miss out on it, is the game-changing part of renewable diesel for the soybean market. How much of a game changer?
Well, we're talking about value added, and let's go back to the ethanol days, the advent of ethanol in about 2003, where it decoupled the corn price from feed price. What it did was more align the corn price with gasoline prices. And so now, if this comes to fruition, the soybeans will be more tied to diesel fuel prices. And rising tides lift all the boats, and it'll be good for all of agriculture if this comes about.
Yeah, okay. What is the market today for soybean oil into the renewable diesel market? And more importantly, what might that market be in 2 or 3 years?
Okay, this is gets into an area of uncertainty right now. But let's say if the United States produces 4 billion bushels of soybeans a year, 2 billion bushels go into the crush market right now. Okay, that could continue to grow every year. We're talking up to the entirety of the U.S. production could go into it eventually. Okay, initially it's going to come out of the export market, and we need to be careful. We're not just going to stiff arm our trade partners that use soybeans for feed. The big majority of what's crushed, it goes out in a byproduct, that soybean meal. And that's what our trade allies want to they need that feedstock for their hogs and cattle. So we'll continue to export that.
Yeah. So we domesticate this bean market, keep more of it home to crush, use the soybean oil here, and find export demand for the meal.
That's correct. Now we have to get better at exporting. Soybeans are easy. The meal tends to cake up in the containers, harden, if you will, and that's more difficult to unload. That whole supply chain is going to need to get a little bit better because we're going to be exporting a lot of soybean meal.
Right. Okay. What's the level of commitment from the players in the renewable diesel industry? Where is the money coming from to increase the output?
Okay, so I keep referring back to the advent of ethanol. This is different but similar, if you will. Back in the early 2000s, it was farmer groups, smaller co-ops building these structures. Now we're talking about nearly every major oil company and major grain company are making these investments. So these are large scale investments. So when we talk about, is this really going to happen or not? We're talking about the major global players in these industries that are putting up money now. Yeah. So that's a good indication that it makes sense and it will likely happen. Yeah. So we're talking about the names everyone would know in the oil and gas and grain industries.
Yeah. So if the refiners are putting money into this, that's a pretty good indication that this has got legs to it, right?
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it all is leading us into sustainable aviation fuel, maritime fuel, the cleaner burning biofuels for the future. And boy, the future looks bright, doesn't it?
Chip, you're exactly right on that. And okay, so we're getting into electric vehicles. There's no doubt about it. Everything's going electric. But when you've got tractors and train engines and airplanes that can't be electrified yet, I mean, that's a huge industry. Yet it needs to get more sustainable and cut emissions. And that's what this is all about. And that's why this really has merit.
Very cool. Tim, great conversation. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you, Chip.
You bet. That is Tim Luginsland. He is the dairy grain oilseed sector manager at Wells Fargo Food and Agribusiness Industry Advisor. Thank you so much for listening this morning. You got to come back this afternoon. Jeff Hogendorn from Professional Ag Marketing is going to be our guest, and tomorrow morning, you know what it is, free for all here on AgriTalk.